You're watching Channel 27, the Brisbane channel.
I took this morning off. I took half the day off to read it. 5 o'clock yesterday.
All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the August 26th meeting of the Open Space and Ecology Committee. The meeting is called to order. So, thank you all. And first on the agenda, we have the adoption of the agenda. And do I have any motions or comments?
Yes.
Yes, I had 3 items that I wanted to put on the agenda that didn't get put on the agenda, but I set them a week ago. One is discussion about further protecting our acres, including the ones that we own, from any possible future change of mind or change of use. The second item was taking care of our trees.
Okay.
Especially right now during the drought. And the third item was for us to have a discussion about the letter that we only just received last week that was issued at the end of July by John Swickey about open space plan. I would like to discuss open space planning in the urban discussion of the park site at Brisbane Village.
Okay. Were there any other committee members that had?
Oh.
Did you have?
Well,
I'm jumping in. Just to be clear, we can discuss all those items and we can decide if we need to agendize them, but you can't decide to take any action about them. And we had already finalized the agenda, and we do have comments. I did email you, I guess.
Yeah, no, I mean, I saw the email, and I saw 2 committee members had sent in some additional comments, and so my intention was to agendize them for next week, or next month, unless there's anything that's critical, for this month. But yeah, no, that was my intention. But
okay.
Yeah.
well, I think taking care of the trees is daily more critical.
Right. But
Daily more
Daily.
critical.
okay.
Yeah. We're at a precipice now where we need to take care of them until the rains start, or we will lose them.
Okay. And do we have any other committee members that have agenda items that they want to bring up?
Yeah, I don't know if we can do anything about it this meeting. I guess we can't, but I did make it out to the entrance to Owl Canyon a couple weeks ago, and it's trashed again. And I did want to ask city staff, what was the deal with the trash can? I thought there was going to be a trash can put out there.
So I have this on the list for staff updates. Can we
Sure.
talk about it then?
And then, it's not even an item, it's kind of a sub-item. On Valley Drive, more dead trees. And since we're supposed to have an El Nino and big storms this year, those trees need to come down. The 340 Valley Drive, I think, is the one they've always had a dead tree. It never got taken down. Now they've got another dead tree. But there are more trees dying just in the couple of months since I last looked at it.
Okay. Was there any other committee members that had other agenda items they wanted to bring up?
There was one more thing, and that was a couple of months ago. We discussed that I would be the representative for the Open Space and Ecology Committee to the Technical Advisory Committee for San Bruno Mountain Habitat Conservation Plan. And I asked Ramona about it, and she had not been notified of that, so she is not including me. And so can we move forward with that? Or do you want to put that under staff items or what?
Yeah, let's talk about that under staff items.
Okay.
One other thing, Kima.
Yeah.
Our special shelf at the library seems to have gone away, and I thought it was permanent, but it's gone.
Yeah, I went in and talked to him too, but he wasn't there. I talked to the staff.
Okay, him.
Can you
Okay.
update us on that one at some point? Okay.
So we do have a lot of additional items, and we already had a pretty packed agenda. So what I'd like to propose is that we agendize all of these issues, and certainly that might give us an opportunity to get more information about what's going on at the library. And then with regards to the trees, I'd like to propose that maybe we have conversation, but we limit it so that we don't impact the rest of the agenda. Well, anybody so move?
I will.
All right. I'll
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. I think that leaves us with presentation from Sunbelt Builders, or
Do we have any oral communications? I'm not sure.
do we have any members of the public that want to?
There was one oral. Do you want to mention this? This is Nori Jaba from Universal Paragons.
Hello, I'm Nori Jaba, and I'm a consultant with Universal Paragon, and just wanted to inform you, and you probably know that there is an event tonight. It's at 7 to 8:30, and it is two ecologists speaking from Biohabitats about the habitat planning for the Baylands. And regrettably, it's the same night as your meeting. I know this is not your usual meeting night, so we would like to offer to set up another time for them to come and meet with you, as well as others in the community that would like to be there as well. So we will work with you about another date, and just want to let you know, if your agenda, you get through it really fast, which looks doubtful, free to come by. I don't think that's going to happen, just based on what I heard. But thank you, and we look forward to having you meet them another time.
I would really appreciate the opportunity to hear from them and to hear from you as well about the whole thing. So could we agendize that for a future meeting?
Sure, and I'll give you this.
And it is my sincere hope that we'll be done by 8:30, but
Yes,
I'm not betting on
that.
We'll stay till 9, just in case.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All righty. We actually, so maybe we'll talk about doing staff updates, but she had sent it to me, I think maybe because she went on holiday and this meeting was later in the month, but we actually had done the agenda the first week of August, so a week or two before you had sent that and before Glenn had sent hers. So I'm open to opening it up like that, but definitely doesn't shut you out. Yeah.
So just blame me if you go till 9:30 or 10, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't know I had competition.
No, not at all.
You don't. You have our full attention, Mark.
Yeah.
So do most of you know what we've been doing for the last, I can't even know how many years, since probably 2006 or 2007 when the first Community Habitat Restoration Day occurred up in the Brisbane Acres?
So I think we have a few new members, so why not?
All right.
Let's maybe.
Well,
start from
I
the-
tried to make this presentation be all-encompassing for everyone's benefit, that, since I know Fred Smith is not here and Lisa Pontecorvo and some of the people that I've worked with for a long time are no longer present, to kind of catch you guys up. And that way you can see what we've done. We definitely had a few lapses of years that we are not involved on the Brisbane Acres, but it's been relatively continuous for probably 7 or 8 years in some way or not. I'll need a cue or something, so I'm not that good. As it fires up here. All right, so my company is Shelterwell Builders. You probably don't know a whole lot about them. We are a small firm here in the San Francisco Bay Area, based in San Francisco actually, that specializes in habitat restoration, invasive plant and wildlife control, and basically doing actual work. I mean, we are contractors and a pest control company, so we have the licensing to do the work, and that's what we do in terms of land management for Brisbane Acres. We've had a fairly long-term relationship with the HCP process here on San Bruno Mountain. It too has kind of come and gone with different, as people have come and gone with, the consultants and the county's staffing, we ebb and flow with whatever as well. But we had a fairly long tenure on San Bruno Mountain, even before Brisbane Acres. So here we go. So basically this is just going to be a geographical site tour of the parcels that we manage, and using sort of the nomenclature that we just arbitrarily lump them together. So this is actually the first time I tried this, but it's Google Earth. So we took your parcel data and overlaid it to Google Earth to give you a little bit of depth perception. That one thing that always strikes me about the Brisbane Acres is they're really steep. And for a community open space, partially inaccessible based on just being really steep. So there's a lot of other parts of the mountain that are a little bit more accessible. Obviously, the Brisbane Acres are right behind the city, and there's a lot of social trails that we'll see a little later that cut through there. But it is a steep little section of the upper Brisbane area, I guess. So those are the major names that we call them. And everything in blue is what you currently own, I think. It's been a...
Green?
Green, sorry. There you go. It's been about 2 years since I've received a city update on actual parcels owned, and I know that the city is actively acquiring, or I think, and you guys are a large part of that, actively acquiring parcels. There's always a little bit of challenge for me to kind of figure it out based on the APN data that I have, and then you have a clever little name like, parcel 91, 92, 93, 94 that's on the Brisbane books, but nowhere else. But as far as I know, that's what you've got to date. It's the parcels accessed via Harrell Road, and those are the farthest to the east. And there's some middle lands there that we just call 98 because that was the most recent parcel that you purchased. And then there's the water tank sites, which multiple water tanks right there in the center, and then heading over to Margaret. And there's a little bit of no man's land in between, but we don't do a lot in between, so we haven't called anything out. All right, next slide. So starting with the eastern side and then working our way west, you got the Herald Road sites. And there's just some pictures. I don't know how many of you have ever been up to the acres, but this is just what it looks like now. And we've got a couple before and afters, but really this is the typical scene. I wish I could show you historical photos through Google, but Google goes back to like 1996 for the historical record, so you don't really get that dramatic change of grassland or shrubland that you sometimes see on some of the other photo records. But basically there's a lot of shrubs and a lot of forests on your property at this point, and a little bit of grassland near the ridge lines. And Herald, as the Herald parcels, they're the few parcels that actually crest over the main ridge road and are completely surrounded by county property, and that's probably your best grasslands, just so you know. So this is what it looks like. This is these are just screenshots from our GIS, and I'll describe a little bit more about how we manage your data. Hopefully you can see it pretty good on your screen. It's a little bit washed out for me up there. Essentially that is your parcels, also in green outlines. And then there's both outlines and solid fill indicating the weeds that we've mapped and treated over the years. And I'll describe a little about some of the things that we might want to do in the future to update that. But just know that this is a long-term contract, and it was always an annual contract, and we just did a little bit each year, and so we kind of have this weird stacked chronology of data that's never been fully integrated. So there you have it. That's what we're made. Can you guys see the outlines very well? Okay.
Yeah. What's the red outline?
The red outline, so there is a key there to the left. I tried to capture that.
I can't read the key.
I know, I hear you. Okay, so the red outline is broom, French broom.
Okay.
And the solid yellow fill is oxalis.
Yeah.
And I feel like oxalis is something that the committee had been interested in the past. There's probably a lot more oxalis now mountain-wide than there ever has been. So that was a pretty early mapping event that probably occurred in 2009-10. So I would say mountain-wide, not just your parcels, but your parcels in the county and everybody else have not really succeeded at curbing the spread of oxalis. And that's especially to be expected around your parcels because you are literally you're the buffer of the city. So you're the buffer of the horticultural impact that if there's ever an impact to the mountain, it's what people bring in their own yards or on their own socks.
A lot of that came from PG&E.
Okay, but yeah. They came from Brisbane, probably.
No, the PG&E trucks, the first oxalis I saw on the mountain was at the top of Army Road where it meets Ridge Road.
Okay.
Maybe now almost 20 years ago from when they replaced those high-tension wires, and they brought those trucks up, and they were contaminated with oxalis.
To blame people like me in San Francisco that wanted that power, because you guys are the main source, right? You get, if you cut off the gas and if you cut off the water and the electricity, it all would happen on San Bruno Mountain.
Yes.
That's how you'd starve San Francisco. Anyway.
Thanks for that.
So moving on, that's the greatest hits there, and this is again just kind of some shots of what it looks like.
Wow.
There is quite a few Monterey pines in the lower parcel, or the collection of parcels defining the Herald Road section. Those have never been managed to date. They've always just been existing and unmanaged. So mostly we've dealt with French broom and fennel. So next slide. This is just to give you an idea. It's a very inaccessible spot. Herald Road sites, and unless you're coming in from the main county ridgeline, it's really hard to get there. And this is sort of like the nearest. This is where the parcel actually meets Herald Road, and so you can see it's not really inviting. We have definitely treated some weeds on there to make it a little bit more open, but it's not, unless you're a 14-year-old boy, you'll have a hard time getting up there. So next slide. And there is a little bit of a crack, and there was once discussion with this committee whether or not we should have a boom pulling day at Harold Road sites, and this was the proposed access, which I think is right next to a private parcel and some guy that parks a lot of cars along Harold. You might know who that person is, I don't, but you kind of squeeze your way up there, and it's just generally inaccessible, I would say. So next slide. And when you get up there, it's actually much more open and much more accessible. So again, mixed shrubs and grasslands, and you're basically looking due west here, and most of what you see in that slide is owned Brisbane parcels, like basically approaching what we call the 98 section. So next slide. And this is just to give you an idea, like there was quite a bit of broom there initially that we controlled just by hand and pulling it and cutting it, and then we had herbicide follow-up. But this is sort of what it looks like. That was about 2 years after we cut all the broom. It pretty rapidly decomposes and kind of gets out of view, and it's not a fire hazard. So that's how we manage the debris in your parcels. It all just goes back to decomposition. There's an old 1960s car in there under those Buckeyes too. I don't know if you can see that. Mm-hmm. And today there's Excelis going through that whole canyon now. So it's basically it's gone from the upper part of Harold all the way down to Harold Road along that creek, and that's where we kind of see it in these really rocky spots. Next slide. And again, this is just a close-up. That's dead piled French broom and natives coming through it. Next slide. And that's kind of what we're dealing with at this point. So you have a really long-lived seed bank for French broom, and there's not a whole lot of work to do other than just annually or biannually going in there and making sure that the French broom doesn't again set seed. So it'll be a long-term project for you guys. It's something that's it's not that big a deal. So like you could even do it yourselves with the community, or it's not out of control. It's just going there every once in a while in the wintertime and pulling those little sprouts. Next slide. And that's just some of what it looks like before and after, where there was some larger plants and they were sprayed with herbicide, and now it's just remains grassland. So next slide. And this is just a highlight of on Harold Road. I mean, there's actually the grassland is fairly intact, and there's a lot of really good native perennial wildflowers and such. But one of my favorite spots in the whole acres is actually this little patch of Prunus marginata, which is it's not a rare plant by any means, but I definitely don't see it in the coast that much. To me, it's more of a Sierran plant. Very common in the Sierras at a certain elevation. And there's the largest patch I know on San Bruno Mountain occurs at the Harold Road, Brisbane Acres. And next slide. If you look in there, it's just kind of this very architecturally interesting, branching, and it's always full of birds. So cool spot that probably nobody ever gets to go see because it's so hard to get to. But next spot. All right, so that's parcel 98. So basically you're just kind of walking along towards the ocean. Next slide. So we start here with just giving you an idea of like the properties that you own. Just for reference, there's a little bit of overlap. That's that same yellow oxalis patch that we just saw in the other screenshot. And mostly there's not a lot of weeds here. As you can see, there is a red outline of broom pretty much between what you own. And let me say that the light lines are social trails. So those are just, TRA once did a map of all the social trails. They were one of the consultants on the mountain. And some of those social trails have been being sort of redeveloped by some people in the community, and some of those trails have had significant amount of improvement by some of these trail folks. So anyway, it's kind of a nice, that trail, if you can tell, it kind of separates the broom from your parcels, so it's almost like a nice little break. And so if that trail is continued to be managed by nice people in the community, then you're keeping broom out of your parcels as well. So there's a nice win-win for everybody. And otherwise, there's a couple pine trees, and most of those little fuchsia dots that look like little eyeballs are cotoneaster. And that's just that's a rosaceous plant that every wintertime has lots of little red berries, very popular in horticulture. And American robins really like to eat those berries and then go poop them out throughout the mountain. So that's just something that you'll always see cotoneaster growing wherever birds fly. So it's one of those things you'll just have to deal with. But otherwise, it's relatively all native with not a lot of weeds. Next slide. And this just gives you an idea of annually in our contracts, we were often asked by Lisa or Fred or others at the City of Brisbane to map like 1 or 2 parcels each year to add that to the knowledge base of the acres. And so this is what a deliverable would look like on an annual basis. It's basically just a paper map showing a single or maybe 2 parcels that were recently acquired, and what sort of weeds or other interesting resources we found on those parcels. We've never found rare plants or anything super exciting. In that way, we mostly just find weeds or no weeds, and I think that's some of the best parcels are just parcels that are really intact and native, and there's not a lot that needs to be done. All right, next slide. So that's what it looks like. Again, just mixed mosaics of grass and brush, and in the ravines you get the buckeyes and the oaks. Next slide. And this is us doing work probably last year. A lot of our work is just basically hiking along and cruising. To date, we don't have any really big things to do on the acres. It's more of just like a stewardship type approach where we walk certain parcels looking for weeds and dealing with all the little follow-up. So it's the little annual French brooms that come up. In this particular case, in the grasslands, it's fennel. So next slide. So that's there's an example of like what it looks like in the grasslands with the fennel in probably right around June. So again, it's been managed for a long time, and it's just a matter of keeping on top of it. So this is from the water tanks, which is the next site, looking back to some of your own parcels. And everything in the middle you don't own, but towards the left you do. So there's a little bit of a break of what you own. And the county comes down there as well. There's that crazy octagon house surrounded by French broom by the water tank as well. So here's the water tank sites. And this is really where the Brisbane Acres work got started, because it's probably the most accessible, especially like infrastructure-wise, parcels the parcels that you guys have. So there's really about what we consider 3 water tank sections. 2 are existing, and then there's one old like foundation of like an old water tank. But generally they're just, it's a high point above Brisbane, and there's a road there. So this area has quite a bit of French broom. The solid fill polygons are English ivy and blackberry. The ivy still remains. Most of the blackberry is on the way out. We've sort of effectively dealt with the blackberry. And then there's like a whole string of French broom. And a lot of the French broom is actually, frankly, off your property, but it's next to your property. So that's something that you'll see in some of the photos, is where we manage right up to what we perceive as the property line, and then there's just sort of a wall of broom. But you got cotoneaster in the scrub there towards the west, but otherwise just where all that impact was with construction over the years with the water tanks, you've got lots of French broom, lots of, there's a little bit of vinca in there, English ivy and blackberry. That's your weedier section. Next slide. That's what it looks like. It's a little bit less grassland, a little bit more scrub. So, there's these sort of, a lot of the broom on your parcels is actually just individuals. And at this point, there's no more patches. It's just individuals that are being managed, as we find them, basically. And so it's more of just like a hunt, like a stewardship type activity where you wander around looking for them at opportune times of the year when they might flower. Next slide. This is just some historic, like early shots of your first workday that Lisa Pontecorva had organized with the city, where you took vans all the way up to the water tank site to drop quite a few people up. We were actually quite surprised how many people showed up for it. And it was, it was kind of not the most sunny day, but there was like 50, 60 people or something like that. All got a T-shirt, all got a lunch and some cookies, and actually pulled most of the brooms, so we had very little to do. So we've just been managing the aftermath. And next slide. Just to show you kind of like there was quite a few people working at once. So next slide. And that's what it looks like. That's what it looked like just a few years after, actually. That's also kind of a historic slide, just with the remaining piles and the grass coming back. Next slide. And then that's largely what it looks like today. So not much material decomposing anymore. It's, you've got some remaining grassland. That's scabiosa there. There's a little bit of scabiosa. We've never managed that because it's just mountain wide and there would be no point to manage it specifically on your parcels. There's quite a few pines. There's even some redwoods and some firs that probably arrive around Christmas time or just after Christmas time. So we often find that on the mountain.
Do you remove them when you find them?
Sometimes. It depends on how big they are. Obviously if they're freshly planted, we try to just yank them out. And we have definitely found that.
Yeah.
Why is it not worthwhile to go after scabiosa? I realize it is elsewhere on the mountain, but...
Well, it's got the kind of seed that would go on any sock or any small animal. Mm-hmm. And so we have no way of keeping it out of your property. And it never really forms big monocultures. It just it's just abundant, but it's not abundant in the way that we see it displacing much else. Okay. So for the amount of effort that would require to manage it, you would not get very much benefit relative to other things we could do. So that was sort of our decision-making framework. Okay. You can manage everything, if you got enough money, right?
Okay, thank you.
But that's sort of the rationale. And this is just to give you an idea, just beyond this parcel that we manage is a lot of French broom. So there's the background there, or sort of the mid stand, the photo there is all French broom. It's never been treated and it's quite healthy and large.
And it's all on private property.
And it's all on private property, yeah.
Why do you pull the trees?
What's that?
Why do you pull the trees?
The small trees that we find they're like planted like Christmas trees.
Like people go up and plant them?
Correct. So we've always felt that, probably not by permission and, it's a good deed, but they're non-native trees that,
Don't belong there.
don't belong there.
I'm just curious. I'm curious, in the absence of fire or grazing, what would the climax community look like on San Bruno Mountain?
How many years in the future do you want me to predict that?
Well, when
when
would it stabilize into a long term? Would it look like?
It'll never stabilize to anything too much. It'll go to mostly scrub,
Yeah.
but the scrub will always yield to things like bay trees and oaks.
Yeah.
And then you'll get that, and then probably another 2,000 years, you're going to get enough warmth in the climate that all the trees that we consider not native now will be native again because they'll just come back from Mexico. So pretty much all the closed cone pines, the Monterey pine, Torrey pine, Bishop pine, all these closed cone pines, they got pushed to Mexico with 10,000 years ago with glaciation, and they were already once native here, and now they're just coming back. And so, that's sort of like the Monterey pine argument is like, where do you want to take a stand on, when is it native? Because it's very philosophically non-native.
Yeah, no, I guess the reason I asked.
So that's what you're going to get climax until it burns, and then you're going to get grassland. So that would be your kind of like your big cycle.
Right. Okay. Yeah. No, because I spend a lot of time on Skyline, and I spend a lot of time on the mountain, and I just it strikes me how different in terms of ecological communities that those two habitats seem to be.
Yeah. Skyline like Montera and like.
Or Sema Creek.
Okay.
That kind of thing. So.
I was gonna, got down that far. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
You have more diversity.
Yeah.
They have a lot of. A lot of that land was heavily grazed, as was yours. But you have more richness that I've seen because we work for Mid Peninsula Regional Open Space District quite a bit. They certainly have some nice properties, but they have a lot of coyote brush as well.
Okay.
And we see that in the East Bay as well. It's like kind of heavily impacted grassland landscapes that historically are now mostly coyote brush or coyote brush with like California sage, with not as even the shrub component is not that diverse. Versus San Bruno Mountain shrub component is usually 6 or 7 different species in a more sort of balanced, sort of ratio.
And the underlying substrata is different as well.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons we have so many endemic species on San Bruno Mountain.
And you don't have deer.
And
that
we
is
don't
actually
have
pretty
deer,
huge for
which is
your
excellent.
plant communities.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Next slide.
It's a good thing that we don't have deer? Or
Yes, it's a very good thing we don't have deer.
They are huge selective pressure on shrub communities. They're like goats, and they eat shrubs more than they eat grass. So your shrub diversity is really differentiated by how many deer are eating it, basically. So this is an example of just kind of what the cotoneaster treatment sites look like. That is a shadow of where once there was a cotoneaster. If you look really closely, you can see little baby cotoneasters there. So what we had done is we just rogue, hike the areas, finding the cotoneasters, usually finding them with binoculars or a spotting scope. We cut them down, we buck them at site, which just means you kind of like mulch them in place. And then we treat the stump with herbicide so it doesn't resprout. But then you're left with sort of this rain shadow of small seedlings that will emerge through time under that cotoneaster for at least a couple years. So these are just some of the weeds that we found that are like uncommon weeds that we found on the acres that don't occur many other places on the mountain, just so, for your knowledge. This is most likely coming from someone's seed mix somewhere in Brisbane, but this is not the population that we actually saw, but this is a reference photo from Calflora. It's ragwort, and the species name I don't even know. It's basically a hybrid, and you can get all different colors, but generally they're sterile. But there is a small population in Firth Canyon that seems to be non-sterile and reproducing on its own without the aid of humans. So you got that. Next slide. You got Lunaria annua, which is a little annual mustard, kind of cute. It's not a bad weed. It's just one we don't see all the time. Again, it's not really taken over or anything. It's just something we don't see elsewhere on the mountain. It too occurs in Upper Firth Canyon. It's called money plant. It's the common name because it's got those mustard seeds look like a little silver dollar. And Firth Canyon seems to be a little reservoir of non-native stuff. Next slide. Margaret Avenue. So this is your farthest west piece of properties, collection of properties. So again, there's a lot of land you own that doesn't seem to have much weed, and that's good. So there's most of those upper areas. I mean, there's a few small dots on the very top of the ridge. So that'd be, see the top of your screen? I don't know how you're looking at it on your screen. Anyway, there's a couple dots that are right near your edge, and those are just a few old populations of strided broom. But otherwise, it's forest. So this is some of your largest forest properties. We've also, there's a couple cherry plums. There was acacia, I believe, that you guys removed at the tree company a few years ago, maybe 4 years ago. And I think that's an active kind of sort of trail / access point that's being developed in the acres by your community volunteers. So we've done a little work around there, but mostly just with acacia sprouts, just so that thing doesn't come back. But otherwise, it's largely, oaks and bays. And I think there's even some right on Margaret. There's considered to be the most native and oldest population of big leaf maple, which now also occurs elsewhere in the mountain. But in Elizabeth McClintock's flora, she only found it on Margaret. So that's kind of cool. Otherwise, there's some outlines. I think you can see some light, jagged outlines. That is the historic occurrence of eucalyptus. And that was another project that you hired a tree company even farther back, I believe, and you split that, if I remember correctly, with the county. So the county and Brisbane teamed up to take out this big stand of eucalyptus right on the edge of your parcels. And so we continue to treat the resprouts, but honestly, again, there's very, very little work to be done. It's just a few of the big stumps just haven't given up yet. Next slide. That's what it looks like. It's actually a really gorgeous stand of coast live oaks. I mean, this is the kind of scene, you see this in like Monterey and Carmel, or these really just beautiful, even-aged, twisted stands of oaks. So there you have it, Brisbane Acres, a little destination just like Pebble Beach. Next slide.
That's one of my favorite, that Upper Paul Avenue right after the turn.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite little groves on the whole.
It's gorgeous.
Everything you've shown, it's amazing.
And this is why it still exists. You guys had the good sense to get rid of the eucalyptus, because otherwise the eucalyptus would shade out those oaks in time. And this is what it looks like still to this day. Unlike the broom that sort of rapidly decomposes in about 2 years and just kind of disappears from view, the eucalyptus logs do persist a little bit. I think they kind of look cool. They're like old bones that you might find in the landscape or something like that, bleached white. So next slide. Right there in the foreground, you can see kind of what we deal with. That's little eucalyptus stump sprouts, basically. They have a kind of a little atypical look. They look different than the older plant's leaves. They're differentiated. They're much grayer, much broader, even a different shape. But we just kind of cruise and find those. And it's pretty much that, fennel, and a little bit of broom. Next slide. There was one small patch of English ivy, which we think we've finally gotten rid of. And again, that's it. It was just this little tiny patch that was in that oak understory. Next slide. That's what it looked like. I mean, again, it was just, we removed a lot of it by hand because it was just easier. So, and that's kind of what it looks like in some of the understory. You've still got a little bit of broom. And so this area takes a little bit more work because there was a lot of broom there, and it was never sort of initially treated. It just sort of kind of consequentially got adjusted when the big equipment was in there doing all the forestry work and removing the trees. So there was a little bit more work here compared to like the water tank sites and just staying on top of the broom. But otherwise, it's, you know, it's not a large project. It's, you know, 3 or 4 days each year, small crew goes through there and just pulls or treats them with herbicide. And that is the one thing that we had found new outside of Earth Canyon. This was their Harta erecta grass. And for a long time, we've never seen this on the mountain, though we predicted that it would come. It's like oxalis, incredibly common in urban Bay Area landscapes, just like pretty much universal garden weed. It's just, you know, ubiquitous. But it had been not found on San Bernardino Mountain for quite long. I mean, you know, in the wildland component of San Bernardino Mountain for a long time.
There's been some up Buckeye Canyon.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's just, this is the first stuff I found on the acres, and this is right around where the acacia was removed. So I can only suspect, since that's kind of an active area, you have a lot of people moving in and out, there's soil disturbance, there was equipment there at one time to take out the tree, it just happened to establish. So we're trying to stay on it and get rid of it. We found maybe a dozen plants just last year. So, we really like the new trail, I must say. It's very convenient when you work up there. And I believe that might be the last slide. All right.
That grass is like public enemy number one. Yeah. Well, maybe not number one, but it's definitely in the top 10.
My chickens love to eat it.
Bring them to my house.
Yeah, I've actually seen white crowned sparrows just devour the seed. I mean, I think it actually provides fairly, you know, nutritious benefit to some native critters.
Except it forms a complete monoculture.
Yeah. All I'll say is I work for the Golden Gate National Recreation Area a lot. The National Park Service that's probably one of our larger clients. And we have been working with state parks, Marin Municipal Water District, Marin Open Space, and GGNRA in a concerted effort to eliminate Earhart grass in just one small section of Mount Tamalpais. And we spent so much money, and you wouldn't really know that we've done anything.
No.
So it's just like oxalis. It's just some of these weeds, they probably are treatable, but the cost is pretty high to achieve any sort of result. So it's not to say that can't be done, but you can't dabble in it for sure. So that's another part of what, you know, we encourage people like really look at the full spectrum of like what species are truly an impact, but also what species can we actually, you know, have the power to manage, you know. And even though something like eucalyptus is there's maybe a pretty steep front end cost to the actual removal of trees, it's a pretty achievable goal. And then once those trees are eliminated and you have oak forest or bay forest, you actually get quite a substantial improvement in the habitat value. Versus something like oxalis or Earhart, it's a little bit harder to make that same judgment, let's say.
Well, with Earhart, if we get it off and out as quickly as we can before it gets a big hold.
Yes, that's certainly encouraged.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I wish we had done that with the oxalis when it first appeared, and that didn't happen. People were not alarmed as they should have been.
Yeah.
So.
And frankly, it's just a tough plant. I mean, I think biologically, we actually consider it more of an annual bulb than. I mean, it basically behaves like an annual, so we sort of manage it like an annual, even though it is a perennial. But it's just it's got an odd life history. It's very resistant to many of the herbicides that we use. In agriculture areas throughout the world, they actually use products that are not even registered in the U.S. to control it for commercial purposes. So, you know, we're on the fringe. You know, we're trying to manage it with what we can, with what effort we can, and we don't even have really the full suite of tools. So that's a particular tough one. I go back and forth with, I think many of you might know Jake Sig.
Oh, yeah.
So we've drank beers and argued about that many times because he sees the devastation, but I also see the just the challenge, frankly, of gaining any ground. So
That's what the oxalis. And if we can get the Earharta out before it's
Yeah.
too late, that would be really.
But I think one thing to advise is maybe as people are doing work more and more on your property is to have some sort of education and just awareness that it's often we're our own worst enemy. So in creating open space is great, but then opening open space up and getting greater access and more diverse access if you get horses and bikes and all kinds of things like that, with that becomes like a lot of responsibility then to manage that for, all those increased vectors. So, I mean, the easiest thing to do is what San Francisco does around their watershed is just put a big barbed wire fence up and arrest you if you try to get in their open space. But, that's not really practical for most of us, so, in my opinion.
So I have a question for the committee, but I want to ask it while you're here, which is, we've talked about habitat value, and we all know that the main species up there that are in biggest trouble are the federally endangered butterflies, and they need grassland, but now we've got this succession problem. So are we, how are we trying to manage this? Are we trying to slow that succession down and give the butterflies as long a chance as we can? Or are we trying to let, take things like Earharta out and otherwise let the succession happen? What are we trying to do about that?
I have my opinion, and I think one of the things that we really need to do is have a balanced plan that tries to prevent things like Earharta and other things that we know that would eventually destroy the grassland too.
Oh, yeah, of
permanently.
course.
But also to, because fire's off the table now as a tool to manage grasslands like it was managed when I was a kid, we kind of have a responsibility to manage the succession even when it's a native plant like coyote bush.
Right.
And also, that reduce the fuel load. And in areas where it's of high habitat value or potential high habitat value, like the Harold Road site, I would really like us to focus on working it back down to grassland, because you're the only tool we have to do that, or manual removal of.
You can always start selling fireworks.
Yeah.
For an Littman school.
But
Free fireworks.
Look what the hell happened with that in Owl Canyon.
True.
Because we got such a fuel load, we will never see Owl Canyon look like it was, because that was incinerated.
Yeah.
Buckeye fortunately survived, but we lost some incredible habitat and trees for other animals besides butterflies in Owl Canyon. And the damage to Owl Canyon is not done yet by any means. When we have an El Nino year, we're going to see that canyon really get ravaged. But I would like to see us really work on the open grassland, especially Harold, where there are, where it crests over the top, where the hilltopping habitat is very important to the calliope, and where there's definitely lupins and areas that are really important. I'd also like to see us manage the perimeters, as much as we can to prevent any more broom from going on to the acres, and ivy, which can just crawl right all the way to the top in no time. And walking by a cotoneaster, get rid of it if you can. Because they don't belong there and they spread prolifically. The birds can eat the toyons instead. So
There's plenty of those, yeah.
Yeah, there's plenty of those. So we don't need the cotoneaster.
Yeah, no. The non-natives, I think that's not what I'm asking about. I'm asking about the native succession like toyon and coyote brush.
Yeah.
And is that a decision for this committee to make?
Is everyone's microphone on?
About how we want to manage it? Because I think so far up there, what we've asked for is just invasive removal. And we haven't talked about trying to slow the succession down.
I think we should slow the succession down, and we have removed coyote bush, haven't we? Or have you?
Incidentally, but not strategically.
Okay. I know that the HCP, the TAC, as recommended in the management plan for county parcels, has an active program to eliminate coyote bush in high priority areas. Because Ramona talked to us about it. You missed that meeting, I think, Glenn. And I
She
would
was
like-
here last month, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd like us to follow suit where we can, especially along the ridge lines where it's really critical.
So how big a job is that for you to figure out, how to do it strategically? I mean, that means you wouldn't remove it every place, you'd remove it certain places like
Yeah,
that.
I mean, Ramona's strategy has been to pick, and that came from Stu Weiss, who I don't know if Stu ever talked to you guys. I mean,
Stu hasn't come to talk to us,
Okay.
but that's the Creekside Science that she said that they would be producing a management plan that should be available
yeah, and
in August.
they did a lot of sort of analysis of what had been done on the mountain for the last 20 years and what they think should have been done. And they do a lot of climate-related work as well, so they're kind of big picture thinkers. And their recommendation was to start strategically around where the lupins exist.
Okay.
So the county has, the lion's share of these big patches of lupin.
Right.
And so that's where their strategic effort is focused, is just making sure that those lupin that are known now persist. Not going in to do a lot of actual restoration of new lupin habitat, but
Right.
just maintaining what's existing. Because the butterfly populations are pretty good now, but we don't want to get to a point where we're seeing that go away. So you guys are a little bit different because you don't have a lot of host plant populations. You have a lot of nectar plants and you have a lot of great plants in your grasslands. I'd say especially around Harold Road is where I see the highest diversity, but you don't have a lot of lupins and butterfly plants.
Okay, so it may not make as much sense to manage our property the same way then.
Well, we did historically have them there, but they have kind of disappeared more and more
Right.
because
I mean,
of scrub
you would need to take an active role in actually reintroducing them probably
Mm-hmm.
to get again that if you really wanted to sort of support the butterfly populations directly. So it's like a two-part thing. It's one, it's succession,
Right.
but it's also where are those host plants.
And do you see any of the viola in that area at all, or have you?
There's a little bit of viola on the ridge, that far ridge above Harold, but that's the only place I've ever seen it.
Yeah, because that.
Margaret's pretty forested.
Yeah, no, but I'm talking about up there on
Yeah.
Harold because it used to be quite prolific there.
Yeah. I'd say between your water tank and Harold Road, that section around 98 and Harold Road are probably your best grassland parcels.
Yeah.
So my understanding is we're not allowed to burn anymore because of FAA regulations? Or what's the...
Clean.
is-
It's just a lot of permits, basically. A lot of permits. It's CEQA. It's CAL FIRE just generally doesn't like, starting fires when they have somebody to put out.
Wrong time to ask.
Because they're always behind on fire season, it seems like. And they're really the agency that's mandated to be participatory in all fires. That didn't used to be the case. It used to be your local North County fire could be like, let's go do a training day and burn the mountain. And that was allowed because local jurisdictions had that entitlement. But then as the politics changed in the state, now we have the state has to be involved in every prescribed fire.
Well, I mean, it seems ironic that that policy is now leading to the long-term threat to the native species. So you
And it's
have,
ironic throughout the whole western United States.
yeah, I'm sure we're not unique in that respect, but it's just...
Part of one of the things that turned the tide on San Bruno Mountain was the wax myrtle fire, and that was a training fire, Cal fire that the person who
It was
was
extra
running
training.
it was not familiar with our weather patterns, and they didn't get it off in time, and they lit it too late, and it took off and threatened houses, and people got really freaked out about it. It did Wax Myrtle Canyon a lot of good for a long time, though.
It did. I think you're right. I mean, this idea that some company like mine is going to go out and cut all the shrubs in the sagebrush steppe of the greater, western United States. And that's really what BLM is doing as well. I mean, they have the same decisions. It's like, we're losing sage grouse because we need more grasslands. So let's go cut down pinyons and junipers and, manage sagebrush better, which really means, let's send a dude out with an excavator and, grind up those trees one at a time at great expense. And it's when you're talking Wyoming, I mean, that's, how much benefit you really get from, $50,000 paid to an excavator operator that's out there for 4 weeks grinding up trees when you're talking Wyoming. So again, it's just sort of I think you're absolutely right. We need big picture solutions.
Yeah.
And fire is probably the most obvious.
Well, it's part of the natural. It's part of the natural cycle, and we've interrupted that natural cycle. So it's, any kind of remediation we do to restore that balance ultimately winds up throwing other things out of balance. It's a very, sort of, it's complex and confusing sort of thing. But
So can I ask
We've
another-
talked about it many, many times on this committee, bringing back fire, and we've been ground down
Okay.
that way.
So we'll use the tools that we have, like Mark, and so next year's plan, maybe we could include more grassland and then also some more. Maybe we can get more budget. Because the other thing I wanted to ask is, besides the acres, we had Habitat Restoration Day in Firth Canyon, and Firth Canyon is a mess.
Lots of ivy, if I recall.
Yes, and lots of other stuff, and lots of erosion, and much more than we were able to handle. And I think we need a plan for dealing with that canyon, or we're going to lose it. And it is one of our urban forests now, but it's also extremely important because it is a corridor to the natural habitat, and it also, hosts a much treasured and probably one of the oldest bay trees in the county, which we'll lose if we don't better manage that canyon. And so is it something that you would be able to put, if we got permission and requested funding, to put together a canyon restoration project? Do you do that kind of work as well?
Sure. I mean,
you're familiar with the canyon, and it's
Yeah.
a treasure, and it's been badly abused, especially after the
it'd be a good focal
floods.
point for your community, annual sort of, work days, because
Yeah.
it's so much more accessible than all the rest of your property.
Well, no, we've done a really remarkable job in Costañas Canyon,
Okay.
and we're staying
I'm just
on it.
talking to
Oh, no,
the
I know.
acres.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But those canyons lead to the acres.
Right.
And, we also have responsibility for the canyon along Samtown Lane, where we took out the eucalyptus trees, and now it's just kind of a big ass mess. And we worked the ivy down off of the mountain, and also in a Habitat Restoration Day. So I think that it'd be really good if we were able to decide we wanted to request work plans for those three canyons, or at least Firth Park and the San Mateo Lane canyons, that maybe we could get more funding to work on those as well as the acres. Because I think our urban open space is a treasure that we've not handled well.
Sounds good to me. And maybe we could include some funding for selective brush removal.
Yeah.
Just know, too, that, Ramona's taken the first stab at it, so she has hired us and another contractor this year to start in October, November, probably, to do, I can't remember that, 100 acres of brush removal is the goal. I don't know if we're going to get that this first year, but that was the goal. So you guys have an opportunity to be observers, because it's right next door, because a lot of that work is occurring on the Ridge and then Allen Buckeye Canyons, so it's right there, just to see how it works, too.
Okay.
Before you go for it full Monty,
Yeah. Well, we're kind of curious what your capacity is, too.
We can cut brush. We have the capacity, not from Wyoming, but for San Bruno Mountain. But,
Okay.
to me, it's still a question mark to some degree. Like, what's achievable just with the HCP budget? Because there's so much that needs to be done with that HCP budget. So many weeds, so much species level monitoring, and then this brush is like a whole nother level of sort of prioritization and management.
But it needs to be done.
Yeah.
Did you say restoration is off the table?
Is your pointed toward?
Did you say restoration is off the table?
For like introducing lupins?
Yeah.
No, that's not where the county is going.
Okay.
So, and when Thomas Reed was managing the mountain with the county, they were a lot more active in active restoration. And I think the technical advisor committee decided that for the amount of money that it cost to try to get lupins established, that they didn't.
So it sounded to me like when you were doing your demonstration that the Herald property would be an ideal place for restoration.
You could do that there, yes. I mean, I would recommend, I think, what we'd like to see more on the mountain, the trend is to go more with direct seeding. So if you can find locations that you can direct seed lupin, it's much less effort, but higher quality lupin populations that seem to live longer. And
Because we also have our community nursery, and
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, we could
And
do
so
2 Wednesdays.
Lupins are cranky.
for one thing, we don't have the bandwidth to go out. Mountain Watch doesn't have the bandwidth to go out and clear the land and then do habitat restoration. But we can work in concert with the contractors that are doing the clearing and then come in and plant. And we have done that before, and the county has actually sponsored some of that work, and then we've initiated some of that work as well. I mean, last year, unfortunately, the weather didn't cooperate, but we had 50 volunteers that went out and planted 1,000 plants in an area that had been brush cut and treated above the quarry. Survival rate, unfortunately, is not going to be good, even though it did actually rain on us that afternoon in Brisbane.
Got early rains.
But
Does the brush have to be cleared down to the dirt?
no, not at all.
'Cause it seems to me you could just put plants in like you're planting a garden.
Well, we did, but you have to clear it to a certain level, otherwise the plants don't survive because they're.
Yeah, and there's different levels of preparation for, like, let's say, live container plants, and that's traditionally what's been done, and you're correct in that there doesn't have to be as much preparatory work. If you want to go with seed, it's probably a little bit extra. But what we like to do is just look for places that seem like they're already ready to go. They're just, but for some reason, missing lupin, because that's sort of like, it's really easy, low-hanging fruit. Why not just boost, throw some seeds out there and with very little effort and see if you get them going. If they get going from seed, it's just like an oak tree. It's, it's just a much higher quality plant that establishes and will probably persist for a much longer period of time than if you plant it from the nursery.
And the hard part is the butterflies don't like all of the lupins. You can have 10 lupins and they all go to the same one, because it happens to be the sweetest one. They'll all taste it. They'll go along and taste, and then they all go back to the tastiest one and lay their eggs. Go figure,
Yeah, I think you want a lot of diversity out there.
Yeah.
So where I was
there's
going
lots
with
of
this
choice.
is, could we have a restoration day that would be geared towards planting lupin and trying to establish a colony?
We absolutely could, but the prep work needs to be done first in order to do that, and it's a different. Planting is a different level of organization than weeding, but it absolutely can be done.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, and I think, you have good resources with, Mountain Watch and Joe Cannon in the nursery there. I mean, you have a lot of infrastructure here that could produce the plants, that can collect the seed. And it's just like Michelle said, it's just the planning and the effort required to facilitate it.
All right. Well,
And then
we can talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we can agendize that for a future meeting to talk about our next Habitat Restoration Day.
What would be the best time of year to plant seed?
Right before the rains.
Oh.
So you want everything prepped and ready to go in the fall, and then basically, it's very fickle with our weather, right? So it's always a little bit of a gamble. It's like going to Reno. And, if your job is gambling, it's a tough job. But yeah, basically when you predict the good rains, because what you don't want is you don't want rains to germinate your seed and then to dry out, and that's frankly what we've got these last couple years. If we've got abundant, like what we had, that Stormageddon, but that's like the only storm we had this year,
Like 2 days.
We got like 8 inches of rain in like one storm, and then it never rained again. And so that's what's hard to work with out there. But that's just 1 year down. So I think the other thing to know is it's not one event, but to do restoration, really, it's multiple events, because you're really dealing with a lot of uncertainties. And then over time, you get purchase with whatever you're trying to do. But it's not like a one hit, not like your garden. It's a little easier to sort of manage the variables and something like that.
So if we were going to try to do it this year, we would need to get our ducks in a row pretty quickly to do it.
That would be, because then you also want to make sure you had seed and plants, which would probably have to be, started to grow or collected like months ago.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be a little early for this year.
Maybe next year.
Yeah.
All right.
It'll give us good time to plan for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe we just, like you said, put that on the agenda and talk about it next
could you
meeting.
add that to the annual calendar to poke us in the spring and see if we're going to take a run at it next year?
But in the meanwhile, we could work together with Shelter Belt to do a more concerted plan for cleaning and restoration of something like Firth Canyon.
Oh, yeah, we can.
Because
stop that.
we could supply, the shade plants. These aren't grassland plants, but larger shade plants to replace the crap that needs to be removed.
Yeah, it's mostly ivy, if I recall. I mean,
Yeah,
there's
it's
a lot
mostly
of-
ivy.
Yeah.
A lot of ivy and, a few other like non-native invasives in that canyon. And if we put together a plan now where we do the groundwork, and then when the rains start, we would, like have a habitat restoration day.
Shall we agendize that for
Yes.
a future meeting? Okay.
Yeah, I think
Sounds
that'd be
good.
really good. Because then the work and the money and the effort that we spend to do the Habitat Restoration Day would have a longer term impact.
Yeah. And the people who are doing the work are going to be able to look at the work they did and see it grow.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
And
important.
that's what
too.
stimulates people to want to do it again and again.
yeah. I think that'd be really good.
And ivy's a really good project. It's like broom. It's very tactile and manual. And to pay professionals to do it is really expensive because it just has to be done manual or with a tractor or something like that. So if you can use like Boy Scouts or
Well,
whoever else instead, you get that same level of effort, and you get that same also awareness in the community.
Well, we did a tremendous, we did a lot, but Firth Canyon was just more than we could handle in a year.
Well, you got to do
One day.
pieces of it.
Yeah, so we would like an
Phases.
assessment, I think, of what it would cost to get it more under control to where then we could have a more positive impact. So I know you don't want to pull ivy, but we need help. So
We use a tractor.
Oh, well, come on, bring the tractor. Because some of it's pretty nasty.
Okay. Any other comments from the committee, or? Thank you very much, Mark.
I do have one comment. I really appreciate the work that you do on
Yeah.
the mountain, Mark, and I know it's sometimes a really thankless job, and it's a lot of hard work, and people don't get to often see the fruits of your labor, so to speak, up close and personal. So it's really great to see the pictures, and it's really great to look up there in the spring and not see yellow.
But we just appreciate the long-term involvement, and I think, frankly, a lot of the projects I do are like construction-related. They're like funded for a single event. We go plant 50,000 plants, and then we don't necessarily go back the next year. It's just very one-hit kind of, and occasionally there'll be a year or two of maintenance till you get it signed off. But it's nice to have projects that don't really have any single, focus point. It's just like keep it good and pay attention. And I think you guys deserve a lot of credit for not only purchasing this property, but you actually actively manage it. And so many of the people we work for, especially like land trusts, I must say, I'm not a fan of all of them, love to buy land, and they have wine and cheese, and Robert Redford comes out and delivers a beautiful speech, and people empty their checkbooks to buy land, and then it just sits there. And the weeds grow, and whatever happens, and it's just everyone pats themselves on the back for buying it, but nobody does anything to actually improve it. So it's kind of nice to see that you guys have slowly grown one piece at a time, but you also manage everything that you purchase without just, forgetting about it. So we do appreciate that as well. I think it's a really good model that, you could sell or something. I don't know. Brisbane Land Trust.
Yeah.
Pan it and spray it as an aerosol. Be good. Be good.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Mark. It was very informative, and thanks for all the work that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that was great. You want to get a water? All right.
Okay.
Moving on, this is actually interesting because there's a little bit of overlap with our previous discussion, but I also, in the interest of time, I want to, try to keep it compact given the other things that we have coming up, including the Climate Action Plan. But I wanted to bring up, Megan and I had the opportunity to go for a hike up on that new trail back behind Margaret Road, and I don't know much about how these things happen, and Mark had alluded to some mysterious network of volunteers, but First of all, I wanted to thank whoever out there is responsible for that, because that was just such a beautiful hike, and I've certainly been on that trail while it was being built. But I just want to express my appreciation to the community members who made that. And then I was wondering, because actually Mark also alluded to the social trails over in the area 98, and I wanted to open it up to the discussion of the committee. But how did these social trails get made, and what are these volunteer networks that maintain them? Are they organized, or is it individual people going out there on their own time? Or is this not something?
I think it must be the coyotes.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, I think leaving it at an expression of extreme gratitude for what the coyotes are doing, I think, and we'll just leave it at that. But yeah, I had a great time on that trail, and just wanted to express my gratitude for that.
Yeah, one thing that I'd like to say is that Brisbane is truly blessed because we have some of the most pristine native California grassland left. They're in the upper reaches of the areas that you hike through. There are grasses that aren't anywhere else. And we're always talking about the endangered butterflies, but we have some pretty unbelievably remarkable plants. And it's still in a cohesive, functioning wildland habitat.
Wonderful.
It's what we really need to protect. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up on the agenda is making sure that we really, truly do protect it, because while we have purchased all of these acres, they are not completely secure for the future as open space. And I think that we need, as a committee, to work very hard to secure them as open space.
Michelle, what do you mean by that?
Well, for example, lots that are owned, parcels that are owned by the city of Brisbane that do not have full protection in the deeds could conceivably be turned around and sold at a later date by a later council that didn't feel the same way. So right now we have a feeling of like we are protecting this open space. We've purchased this open space. This is Brisbane's open space. But say 10 years down the road, you have a leadership that is very pro-development, or wants to trade and do this or do that. Some of those parcels are not protected. For instance, ones that were bought half with Coastal Conservancy money, all they have to do is pay the Coastal Conservancy back the amount that they contributed, and then Brisbane owns those lots outright and could conceivably, I'm not saying that anybody currently would want to do that, but could conceivably turn around and sell them. And what I never would have thought that was possible until we sold that property at Shanghai Bakery that was deeded to the city as open trails. And it made me realize that these lots, these acres that we've worked so hard, so many people have worked hard to secure as open space, are not truly protected in a manner that is bulletproof.
So you're saying it's up to the city councils to determine if they want to sell them in the future or not?
Yes, that is.
Is there a solution outside of it?
So
I think that there is. You need to get conservation easements and deeds of trust and that type of thing that is pretty unbreakable attached to those properties that make it irrefutable that you cannot later, at some future date, 10, 20, 30 years down the road, decide you need money and sell them off. Or you decide you need economic development and sell them off.
Michelle, I agree with you that this is an important issue.
Right.
I want to ask you, do you think this would hold till early next year?
Yes, but I want to
Okay.
make everyone very aware of it so it's on your mind and that you're thinking about it
Thanks.
and that we don't forget this.
Yeah, I'm just worried about the FEIR on
No,
the map.
I agree.
So
But if I get run over by a truck tomorrow, I want
we'll
you to
remember
remember this.
We'll
Fix it.
fix it
Because it's
posthumously.
really been on my mind a lot lately, because we are vulnerable.
yeah, I definitely agree and think it's a really important subject, and I'd like to give it the time that it deserves
Yeah, I do too.
for full committee discussion. So I'd like to move on to the agenda item about recommending to the council to adopt the climate action plan, and opening it up to the committee to whether there's any comments on the climate action plan and potentially suggested revisions. Or I'm not sure exactly where we are with that, whether the one that was sent out to the committee is considered complete, or is that still in draft mode, or where are we at with that?
So, apologies that was just sent out yesterday. It's been, a long effort of researching and having subcommittee meetings, and then a period of time to actually put it into a document. And we know that you just got it yesterday, but we see it as, we want to get an adopted climate action plan. We see it as a living document. It's hard to capture. You can't even capture everything that's going to happen in this year, because things happen even as we wrote it. We're hearing about new actions and new programs and new policies. So we think of it as a living document. We want to adopt something, and then we're going to be working on it as a committee, and we're going to be figuring out how to implement all the goals that we've put in here. So we know it's not perfect, and some ideas have come up, and maybe they're not exactly spelled out, or some details may not be as detailed as we want, but we want to take it to council and get something adopted and then be able to work on it. I don't think it's going to be in any way an endpoint.
So what I'd like to do is poll the committee members in terms of who's had an opportunity to review it and get any comments together, or are there people out who, given that it was just sent out yesterday, weren't able to consume the entire 90-page document in the last 24 hours?
I certainly haven't read it since we got it.
I did, but that's only because I had the luxury of working from home today. I cannot see how anybody else would have gotten through it.
So, and I guess the proposal from staff is that we move to adopt it with then further revisions being opened up. Is the intention really to get it to the council meeting for the next council meeting to be adopted? Or do we have a couple months to work with and integrate comments before we go to council? Or
Well, we wanted to try to bring it to them in September.
Okay.
That's our desire.
Yeah.
But it's not if the committee isn't, is unwilling to, because it's got to be your recommendation.
Sure.
That they adopt it.
Well, I guess I'd put it out there to the committee in terms of is there any sense of the committee in terms of wanting to have some time to review it and then move for adoption, or are people comfortable with adopting it and then agendizing next month, talking when everybody's had an opportunity to digest this, and then everybody can bring comments to the table, and then we can move to amend it subject to those comments and to that discussion.
But I guess what's the point of it going to City Council if we think there might be amendments, right? And
I think it's going to be a living.
So I think that's the idea, is that it would be living and that we could modify it even after it's been adopted.
I guess, is it possible for us to understand what's the procedure from now on? So it goes to City Council, if they adopt it, what happens with it, and are we targeting a certain deadline?
It's a plan that then staff with you as our Citizen Advisory Committee implements, and we have a goal by 2020 to reduce a certain amount of greenhouse gas emissions. So we're one of the later agencies in the county to have a plan, and that's one of the things that we were tasked with when I came on the committee. And I know we just got the document, so it's not, if the committee is not comfortable, we can work through how it can be reviewed. There's a program that the state has that's kind of they call it a Beacon Award program that recognizes work that agencies have done towards reducing greenhouse gases and all the climate-friendly programs. And we could get one this year if we have a plan adopted, and that's why one of the reasons why we're trying to do it.
Right.
What does the Beacon Award give us, other than a feather in our hat? Is there any money attached with it?
No, that would be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah, then we definitely would be moving. Way to vote. Absolutely. What I'd like to propose, because one thing I'd like to avoid is getting comments when not everybody is able to really participate in the conversation. I really would like the opportunity for the committee to all speak and have an opportunity to gather their comments before we really give it, a thorough hearing. So what I'd like to, am I allowed to move, or how does it, I'd like to
Tell us what you want.
I'd like to propose that we adopt it and then talk about it and amend it next month so that we can have it in front of the council for the September meeting.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Do you don't really require us to support it or amend it or anything? I mean, it's something you've done for the city, the betterment of the city. So
No, but you guys are a key component, and if you're not recommending it, that's a big void that would be asked about.
Barbara and I have spent many hours working on this, and so and I personally don't feel comfortable voting on this tonight because I've looked at part of it.
That's good enough for me.
my question.
I was going to ask the same question because you two are the ones that have been putting your heart and soul in it.
So one thing the committee can maybe do, I guess, is you could maybe at least have us look at it, and because we have been working on it. Barbara's already read it. I read part of it today, but I had to teach today, so I certainly haven't had time to look at the whole thing. And I already found a couple things that I think need to be changed. And, I realize time is of the essence, and the council wants this, and I want the council to have it. So it's not that, but I can't say, based on what, on the hour I spent on it today, yeah, fine, let's do it. So maybe we could have the whole committee look at it. Maybe Barbara and I could look at it. And
Sure. Well, I mean, I didn't get past the mayor's statement, so.
Is it possible for us to take a week and provide comments? I don't know whether we want to provide them to Barbara and Glenn or directly
When's
to.
the council meeting?
Could the committee members send comments via email to staff, and then we could incorporate those in a subcommittee meeting?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then review it at the top of our agenda next month. And
Or maybe,
because we only have 3 weeks till the next meeting, not 4.
oh, I know.
oh, what's the next meeting date? Did you guys?
The
pick
third
one?
Well, it's supposed to be September 16th.
Yeah.
Is that still the date we want to do?
Yeah.
And then when's the
Council meeting.
Council meets the next day, so that wouldn't,
Oh.
that would
Yikes.
be.
That would what?
That wouldn't be soon enough because we need to have it on the agenda
Yeah.
a week before, technically.
Oh, it has to be.
Can it go to the next council meeting? To the one after the 17th?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or else
Do you-
maybe we could meet.
Do we want to move our meeting up a week?
That would actually help me because I have a conflict.
I do too.
On the 16th,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm not here.
and I forgot to bring my calendar, so I don't know.
I'm not here
So
on the 16th.
Why?
16th would be.
I don't, can we have this
Is
room?
the 9th open?
I didn't think we
I'm not sure if we can have this room.
I could do the 9th.
I could do the 9th.
I could do the 9th.
Yeah.
And I actually have a conflict on the 16th too.
Oh,
I
boy.
just realized. So
I'm gonna trade. I'm not even here.
3 of us have conflicts on the
4.
16th, and it'll
Four
prevent
of
us
us.
from getting.
4 of us have.
4 of
conflicts.
us, okay.
All right, well, sounds like we cannot meet on the 16th. I guess we could decide that we could meet off camera if there, I'm not sure if someone meets on the second Wednesday of the month in this room. So we could always meet without cameras and still notice our meetings and still have them be public. So if we have a majority decision, we could move our meeting to the 9th.
Can do the 9th, yeah.
That's
Yeah, I
okay.
can do the 9th. I'm okay with that.
Is the room available?
Like I just said, I think we could still meet
we can go in the
and
other
not be televised, yeah.
Okay,
It may or may
so
not
the
be
9th.
open, is what you're saying? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I'm not sure who meet,
Okay.
if the other,
We can meet either way, though, is the gist of it. Okay.
so I move that we move our next meeting to the 9th, and at that point, we'll have comments
Right.
Perfect.
to,
So, and
The
I
action
guess
plan
this
at
is,
the top of the schedule.
yeah,
I'm
and move the
thinking-
action plan to the top of the schedule.
I'm thinking of like a reprise of the, what was that, the draft EIR, where would we all submit our comments to staff to collate, and then we use
Yeah.
that to guide the discussion, or do we send it to subcommittee? I think it would be better to, everybody send, this is just my opinion, so I leave it to, to the committee's consensus, but to send it to staff, and then we could get those comments sent out to us in advance of the meeting with the notes for that month, and then we can use those notes to talk about the draft EIR.
Yeah,
Is that
The draft plan.
does that work?
I would actually favor sending them to staff and the subcommittee, kind of going over them and collating them, because I think
There could
just
be
a bunch of
repetition.
comments together with the plan at a meeting could be a really clumsy
Right.
process. And some of them are going to duplicate each other, so kind of. weed 'em
Absolutely
out.
fine with
Right.
that. Yeah,
Me
thanks,
too.
Glenn.
And it would give us a chance to try to incorporate them so that the plan was that much closer to
Right.
being where we
Oh,
wanted it.
okay, great. Yeah.
Right, so we need to schedule a subcommittee meeting then.
Yeah. I only have one concern, and I think it's maybe a minor concern in face of our other choices, and that is I would really like the session that we talk about the climate action plan to be televised for people to see.
Point.
And so I don't know, let's cross our fingers that the 9th is open.
Or that someone's willing to trade with us?
Yeah, or that somebody's willing to trade with us, because I would really like the public to be able to access that particular session.
That's a good point.
Believe it or not, we do have a following.
Well, and we did advertise, especially the last meeting when we talked about the measures, and we do notice our meetings, so hopefully people are watching. We haven't gotten any direct feedback, but we have talked about some of the plan in prior meetings.
That's right.
Okay.
So do we need to take action, or we're all in agreement, everything's copacetic?
We probably should set some kind of deadline for
Yes.
people
Yes.
commenting. What seems reasonable? I think a week.
A week from now?
How
We still have to fit a subcommittee meeting in.
Yeah.
And then staff needs a little time, so.
So the second?
Okay.
That would be good.
Yeah, September 2nd.
And will you please also ping Glenn and I if we haven't gotten to you about when we're going to have our subcommittee meeting?
Yeah, we need to figure that out soon.
Yeah, it needs to be done very promptly.
Can we decide that now? Not to.
I don't think
everyone
Glenn
else.
has her calendar.
Oh,
I forgot to bring my calendar.
So I'll manage that at home.
And I've got at least some Friday meetings, but not every Friday, so I should be able to meet on a Friday morning sometime.
The 4th would be good, but we'll check by email.
Okay, sorry, I forgot the calendar.
Okay.
All right. And so I guess moving from subcommittee of the climate action plan on to subcommittee reports. And let's kick it off with the community festival, and my co-subcommittee member, Megan, would you?
Yes, hi. Kima said we went up on the mountain. I tell you, it's a great way to have a committee meeting.
Yeah,
Keep
sure
it
is.
Brian active. And so we did talk about.
Megan, could you speak
Oh,
into the...
sorry.
Oh, do you want this one? Or is
No, it's okay. So we met and discussed the community festival, which we're excited about. I have a meeting with Gail, who's the videographer, on Saturday. Hopefully Kima can join us to kind of discuss what her role and how she will be working the crowd. I also talked with Barbara about bringing some training about what were you going to train, Barbara?
Whatever.
But just some training to the group and kind of pique everybody's interest and sustainable living. Yes, thank you. So that also we had, and then the other thing we need to do is get people to sign up for different time slots. So we definitely want to put that out to our committee here to see who could sign up for different time slots for the day. And what am I missing, Kima?
I think we had the invasive species display
Yes.
coming back.
Which we had done before, and I think,
Yes.
do you still have that, Glenn, or who was it that had it?
Do we have the-
Natalie has the boards.
Natalie has the boards, right?
Yeah, so
Invasive-
somebody needs to go out a couple of days ahead of time and get the exhibits. I'm kind of up to my eyeballs.
Yeah, it's the 3rd, right? So, October.
You can probably find most of them in my backyard.
I was just going to say.
Yeah,
I can bring your Harta.
Who?
I can bring your Harta erecta. I have lots of it right in my front yard. But
Yeah, I don't
Now,
know.
maybe somebody else could.
What are
do
the
that
other
this year.
plants that are on the,
If you want to bring it, if you maybe just bring that board.
Or send
for
us
the
a list of the
send
plants
us
that are on
the
the
list.
board.
Actually, what I did last year was I went out the morning of the community festival and I went down Quarry Road and I managed to
Find everything.
Yeah.
pretty much get it. Yeah, so
I brought some stuff and.
so it's got I think it's got eucalyptus, it's got broom, it's got blackberry, it's got wild radish, it may have mustard.
Fennel.
I got blackberry in my garden, I can bring that.
Yeah, so if you would
And I have fennel too.
email everybody, and then everybody can kind of go, we have this and we have this, that'd be great, and then whatever's not, I'm happy to go out and pick up the morning of, because I'm going to be there first thing in the morning, so.
Yeah, likewise. So, will that work, Natalie, if you could send out a list of what's on?
Somebody just needs to bring the board to the,
Yeah.
we need to look at it first and see what kind of shape it's in. It's back there somewhere.
We'll bring all the materials to the
Okay.
meeting before the fair.
The fair, so we can look at it and decide what we
That
want
would
to
be September 9th.
Yeah, the next meeting, right?
Oh, that is the next meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will be there all day, but I will not be signing up for a formal slot, but I'm happy to relieve anybody that's
When you need
there
it.
because I will be at the Mountain Watch booth, which is going to be right with you.
Yes.
We're usually
Yes, you're going to be next to each other.
right next to each other.
So sharing.
Yeah.
Likewise for me, I will be in and out, but
Yeah.
I'm not going to do a formal shift. I did have a question though. Are we going to have a black footprint pinata again this year?
No, we're going to have a videographer instead.
Yeah, I was going to say,
That would be cool for her to take pictures of.
oh.
So, and then,
I don't think we have that much money.
what other things did we have? Do we have any stuff from, PG&E or Climate Action or any of the other sort of materials that we give away? I remember we discussed.
Yeah, I think whatever, the same materials I think we had
Yeah, we
given
just-
away last year.
the rest of the stuff
'cause I
that's in
think it
that
went-
box.
Yeah, it's in that same,
Okay.
yeah. So we'll do the same materials that we gave away last year.
Yeah.
PG&E, I think, will show up if you ask them to. They've had somebody show up in the past, and maybe they could have somebody sign people up for home energy audits. I wonder how that would work. Or,
Yeah.
Yeah. I almost hate to give out too much paper because
Yeah.
it just
That's what
ends
we're not
up
supposed to.
being,
Well, nobody's using it, and then it gets outdated, and then it's just a waste of
Yep.
trees. But do we know who do we call at PG&E to touch base with?
Maybe 2 fairs ago, I contacted someone from PG&E to send me new materials because all our PG&E materials were outdated. And they asked a lot of questions about the fair, about how many people attend, about the size of it, what the other booths are. And they kind of said they normally don't send out people to a fair of this size
Okay.
and activity. You can try again. I can give you the contact.
Okay.
I'm not sure if their answer will change.
All right. But do we know if our materials need to be updated, or we don't want to?
I'll look at the dates again
Let's
and-
look and see what you have.
Yeah, I'll look at the dates again. If they're outdated, I'll request new materials. We send them pretty quickly.
So in the appendices of the Climate Action Plan, there's a number of organizations that do home energy audits. Maybe not PG&E, but maybe we can wrestle up one of the other ones, like San Mateo Energy Watch, or I can't remember what all there are, but there's several in there, which is really wonderful, and we need to make use of them.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Thanks.
And you, Natalie, you have contacts for the San Mateo Energy Watch?
I think they're in the back of the Climate Action Plan,
Yeah, perfect.
in the appendix. I think that covers it. Was there any other stuff we
I
discussed?
think that was it.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank
Sean, is Sean going to come with his biocharcoal and compost? He's been pretty popular in the past with that.
Yeah, we haven't reached out to him.
I might want to ask him.
Well, it was kind of, he lost interest. I think we did it too many years in a row, so our plan was to let it
Sit for a year.
sit for a year or two, so because it was not drawing. Yeah, it needed to become new again. So I don't know if the committee feels we've reached that point or not. It's
Maybe give him a
subjective.
break this year.
I think if we're going to do the video thing, we should really put a lot of energy into it.
Okay.
I think so.
Next year.
Have like little talking points for people, little cards for them to think about, I mean, just really put some effort in there so that we can really do this well if we're going to do it. Because I think it's such an incredible opportunity for us to make a mark and get people involved. And I think that if we have too many things going on, there'll be too much distraction.
Right,
Yeah.
and we did talk about having people set up and have a timing, and you show up at this time, but we just figured if you do that, people aren't going to show up when they're supposed to, and you're going to expect them, and you're going to be looking for them. It just sounds more like we have
Yeah.
people that are there, maybe like you said, give them the cards, the talking points, and then if all else fails, we go out and we start going
Yeah.
out and grabbing people
Yeah.
and walking around and bringing
Exactly.
people into it throughout the whole festival.
And I also think that, I don't know if you guys want to have any kind of like different backdrops for people, like in case it's noisy or like almost like and here's the, here's the photo booth for you, here's the interview booth, or,
Yeah, the media
So,
room.
but you guys can talk about that with Gail and see what you guys need to do for that.
And we'll see what she has, and maybe we can.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Yep.
I keep thinking visuals. I mean, that's why one reason the pinata would be good. But what about seeing if we could get like the bag monster from San Mateo County?
I guess we
There's this horrible costume. I would hate to wear the thing, but I saw pictures of it, and there's video of it when we were trying to get the bag ban passed. It's this costume made out of plastic bags, and it's really a trip. And it would attract kids' attention, I'm sure, and it would attract other people's attention. It'd be a good thing to film people next to.
That's a great
We could have the
idea.
bag
Something
monster
like-
photobomb the
Yeah.
No, but that is specifically, you do want to,
True.
plastic is just such a horrible creation for what it does to the ocean and everything else. So, anything to bring that knowledge, especially to the kids, and having something like this.
So do they send a warm body with the costume?
Or is it just the costume?
Are you
I think
vol-
it's
are you
May just be the
volunteering?
costume.
Are you volunteering to wear the costume?
No.
Sorry.
Maybe for a while, maybe we could take turns wearing it. I don't know, but I think I would. I'd do
wear it
a
for
little
minute.
while.
You wear it for a minute.
But it's a film, right? You need visuals.
Yes.
That's all I know about filmmaking is you need visuals, but you do need visuals.
Well, part of the visual will be the actual people that she's filming.
But I think it is a great idea.
But I think
because
it's a good
the
idea, yeah.
Bag monster costume is going to bring people in. It's like, oh my gosh, and it's a great idea because really,
I
that's
think
what you
great.
need to get people enrolled. And
And that
excited.
comes from Piccini or who?
San Mateo.
No, I'm not sure. I would just Google
I'll go-
bag monster
Google-
San Mateo County and
Yeah.
see
Alright.
what.
I'll Google it and find it.
Oh, that's great.
I think it's recycle. No, it's not recycle works. I used to know.
All right. The great Google will tell us.
Yes.
I had an opportunity to read the letter about fracking. I thought it was really good and gave a lot of really good information.
Can you pull that up?
Yeah. Sorry, I was just kind of jumping into the next
cool.
subcommittee.
Oh, by the way, I will get, if anybody wants to sign up, please let me know because we do need to have it manned. And I've got the morning covered, but,
I'll be there pretty much all day.
okay, cool. Thanks.
Okay,
Yeah.
fracking.
Yes, fracking. So I'd just like to thank Mike Mike, you put this together, right? Yeah, so really great job, talking about some of the really urgent issues surrounding fracking, and just wanted to say thank you. Open up for comments of the committee regarding the letter.
Bravo. When are we sending it to the council?
Yeah, I read it when you first sent it out. That was a couple weeks ago, and so many things have filtered through my mind since then. I don't remember if I have any comments, but I do remember overall being very impressed in a very positive way. So thank you, Mike.
Thank you. If you have anything you want to send to me before you send it to him, I could always do revisions. It's not a problem.
I think it looks like a good letter to me too.
You'll
I think.
just send it to me, though. I'm not going to guarantee.
Oh, sure.
I'll remember it.
I'm just putting this out for the committee
Thank
that, Jerry Brown has ramped up the greenhouse emissions reduction goals for the state of California, and that might be a good tie-in here, that reducing fracking is a way to get us closer to those goals.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
good point.
Is there a second page to this?
No.
Yeah.
There's a first page to it. I mean,
That's the second
it
page.
printed out, Barbara, it looks like this.
Yeah. That's right. It's the second page.
All right, any other comments from the committee, or do we have a motion to
I
send?
do have one comment, and that is, this is a great letter for banning fracking locally, but we were also considering asking council to send a letter to the state. So I don't know if this could be reworked by the council into that letter, but we had two goals, and this is great for goal A, but I just want to make sure we have a game plan for goal B.
Yeah, and that's a good point. One of the things I noticed when reading the letter is put the request, which really comes in the very last sentence of the letter, put that as its own paragraph, so it stands by itself. I find that in writing, letters of request, it's good to always kind of isolate what exactly you're asking rather than having it embedded in another paragraph.
Right.
That's great.
Yeah, and then
Just send a revision over and show me how you'd like it to look, and I can easily cut and paste and put it, rework it.
yeah, I mean, in my case, it's just
It
hitting.
needs to go to staff, though.
Yeah,
Brown.
absolutely.
I don't understand.
We'll send our comments to staff, who will share them with you, because we can't communicate
Okay.
directly because of the Brown
I
Act.
figured it was legal, I just didn't
Yes.
understand how it works.
Excellent. And any other comments from this side of the committee?
Just that we get this done as quickly as possible.
All right.
And what is Plan B? Are we doing anything about that? The Part B for the state?
Oh, so I guess the request would be to send in your suggested revision to staff. So, adding on a statement about writing a statement of support or whatever. But if you could just submit that to staff, and then staff will circulate the proposed revisions, and then we'll agree on them over email. And that way we can get it out
So
before.
write a second letter to the state.
Council.
No, we asked the council to express their opinion to the state. Yeah.
So it could actually just be a separate letter or a part of this one?
Just another sentence at the end of this one. Yeah.
Okay.
Just
Good.
saying, banning fracking in Brisbane, for example, banning fracking in Brisbane and expressing
All good.
opposition to fracking. Yeah. Cool.
If we can ban tattoo parlors, we ought to be able to ban fracking.
I don't know, I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole. In the interest of time, at 8:12 in the evening, let's move on to the report from the California Climate. Sorry, my eyes. I did not bring my reading glasses. California Conference on Climate Action Planning.
Wow, that was awesome. I had this really great plan today to condense my 9 pages of notes into a like 1 page of talking points. But I read the climate action plan instead, and maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe that was a mistake, considering we're not actually doing the climate action plan anything here today.
Did you want to put that together for our September 9th meeting?
Yeah.
That's an option.
Well, I could, but is that going to be too much? Going over this and that?
If it really is a one-page document, no.
Me and 1 page documents are not really good friends. I could I have goals, but that,
I mean, because I know that there was a lot in it that was amazing, but curating that information down would be really helpful.
Yeah. So, 9 pages of notes. I don't know, just tell me what you want me to do. I can go into it now, or if you want me to, I can do my best.
I guess, is there anything that you want to share that we should consider before providing the comments on the
Definitely.
climate action plan? Then I guess we need to get your notes as we were working on
All right. So let me just speak to a couple of different points here, and maybe I'll have to pick up some things next time, but let me go ahead and try to start. So one thing that I found that was really interesting is if you remember during the DEIR, Glenn found a document that said that VMT, vehicle miles traveled, is increasing despite the fact that we're putting all this effort into local housing and mixed-use housing and transportation and low-income housing. VMT is still going up. We are losing this battle. And this point was brought up again at the climate action planning. And I thought I put together the fact that one of these things that's really interesting is this conference was held at Cal Poly. And Cal Poly itself has had a 17% reduction in transportation. And that is because they have I feel that's because they have dedicated housing for their population. So the housing that is on campus is only for students, right? So where they need to be is where their housing is. There's a connection there. There's a unity. Right now we have a situation where we have housing, but the housing isn't connected to the employers. So maybe you have a job in San Mateo, but you're living in low-income housing in Burlingame, right? Yeah, okay, whatever. Whatever. Okay, bad choice. East Palo Alto, right? Because, one of the things I got out of this conference is that you really need to not only throw money, you can't just throw money. It's like if I took a handful of marbles and I threw them at a set of cups on a table, and the marbles were representative of the people, and the cups were the housing, some of them would land here and some of them would land there. The only way to actually reduce VMT is to somehow connect the housing to the employer.
Well, the problem with that, Barbara, is that when you're looking at the college situation, it's no problem to go, you're going to be there for 4 years or 5 years or 6 years, and you're willing to accept that, and that's a transient population. But in the last 12 years, I've worked, San Francisco, San Rafael, Walnut Creek, Emeryville. Oh, and San Francisco again in between. And I still live in the same place.
Yep.
And so that's the reality of the business world as opposed to college.
Okay, then we shouldn't worry about VMT and building houses.
Well, we should, but you need to worry about it in different ways.
Yeah. I'd like to respectfully request that perhaps if you could condense your 9 pages of notes and maybe provide a report in the next meeting that we could work off of a sheet. I'm just really concerned about the time with it being 8:20, and I don't think we have time to discuss everything that was discussed at the...
We're going to miss a lot.
No, I'm just going to discuss everything.
No, but I just don't really think that we have time, so I'd like to agendize this for the next meeting. Just if you could.
Well, I'm going to throw out one more thing, and that is that a lot of people who are still working on their climate action plans are looking at writing climate action plans for the 2030 goals now, not the 2020 goals. So that's something we might want to consider.
Yep.
That it may just be that, 2020, that's only 5 years before we've got a new plan. So I like that. That's just what they said, is that a lot of people are looking, the people who are still writing, most of them are looking at 2030 plans. So I don't know, there's upsides and downsides to that.
So Barbara, from the people that presented there that already, I assume they have already a 2020 plan if they're working on a 2031, were there any that we can access their action plans and see what their 2020 plan looks like?
No, that's not, I'm sorry, that's not what I meant to say. I said of the people who are still working on their plans.
Like us.
Like us, who have not yet done a plan. Most of them are shooting for the 2030 goals.
Which are different than the 2020 goals.
Where ours is aimed at the 2020 goals. So.
And at the county level, they're talking about whether, when CCAG has offered the consultant support, whether to look to 2030 or 2035. And that's another reason we want to do this and why we're calling it a living document, is this is like the first step. I don't think we should shred this and
Oh, no. But no, the governor's increased the ambition of the plans of the state by quite a bit for 2030. And so that's what's being referred to here.
So we're saying that people can work toward 2030 more aggressive plan without having a 2020 goals in place, meaning they don't need to meet anything by 2020, they can just shoot for the 2030 goals? I'm
No.
just trying to understand, I guess, what's...
No, but I think if you were going to hit a 40% reduction in 2030, there's probably be really difficult not to hit a 15% in 2020. That's probably what their approach is.
Any other salient points you want to share at this meeting, in advance of next meeting?
Just a quick question for the staff. I mean, if I only read about 25% of the document, so we were in one section. It said that we were already way ahead of most of the people in the state. So if we're shooting for these goals, or 2020, 2035, whatever, does it get progressively harder for us to hit those next level goals? I mean, are they going to have higher expectations for us?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there'll be a lot more measures that'll be needed to be implemented to get to those numbers, because we're gonna exceed the 2020 goal if we did everything in the plan in the next 5 years. We would exceed that number by a bit, but the 40% is not a linear increase from 2020. So
it's going to be next to impossible to get to, if 40% for the rest of the state is like 60% for us.
well, and the state adopted passed some bills and laws that helped us and credited us with some of the transportation emissions. So we're not, and that's part of what is important about our plan, is that we want the county to step up, and we need the state to do their part, but we're still going to be doing on the local level everything we can. And so that's what is also spelled out in the plan, what we can do and what else is helping us reach our goals.
What the scientists are saying is we need to reduce 80% at least by 2050. So it's just going to get more ambitious.
Yeah.
I don't know if most of you have heard, the state is also having goals of zero net energy buildings, so I believe that will also drastically change the greenhouse gas emissions that are being emitted. And so, I mean, goals that they have set for 5 years out, so I think that will definitely change a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Any other thoughts about the reduction targets or the Climate Action Conference?
It'd be interesting to see Barbara's notes.
Yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to seeing them. And absolutely.
Maybe as soon as she has them condensed, she can send them to city staff and they'll forward it to us.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Awesome, thank you. Notes on the work plan from the July meeting. So I think we have a request from Michelle to do 2 to 3 restoration days per year. And so that would be a spring or a fall habitat restoration day instead of June. I know that certainly works better. June is a really bad month for getting a lot of stuff done, given other commitments. But I don't know, Michelle, would you like to kind of go through these items?
Well, just that I think we're all kind of in an agreement on that one. And then we didn't move forward with asking the council for support in purchasing the Levinson and Peking handicraft properties.
We didn't?
We sent them the letter.
Did we?
Yeah.
Oh, did they respond?
They didn't respond.
So we
That was
never know
months
when.
ago. That was months ago, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. And then when the lot coverage letter will be addressed by the council?
Yeah, and we were going to talk about that in staff updates.
Yeah.
They were intending to, and I think it's listed on the agenda, they were intending to have an item about Brisbane Acres zoning regulations, and I guess the city attorney was reviewing what was prepared and he wasn't ready, so they are going to do it in September, so we'll send you an email when it's on the agenda.
All right.
And the lot coverage is part of what, I believe it's from council members Miller and Liu that had some items they wanted to talk about in the acres and the zoning regulations, and this is part of that.
Okay. And then we sort of talked a little bit with Mark Keith tonight about adding contracting work on Firth Canyon to the work plan.
Right,
So
so
I'd like to do that.
we we can get his proposal, and then we can discuss and have a decision and have it agendized when we get something from him.
Can you make sure he knows that we want him to do that? I'm not sure he was clear on that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And we actually did ask for more budget this fiscal year that we've started in now. The intent was to try to treat some of the invasives with something that's natural as an herbicide, but I'm not getting very positive feedback about some of those options. There's citrus, and then there's like the vinegars. No one finds them very successful for what they're doing. So.
For what they're doing, it hasn't been proven out.
But the upside is that we do have more money to do a little bit more this next year.
Okay.
So in reviewing the OSEC work plan, we have the climate action plan that is going to be reviewed, and we've just covered that, going to provide our feedback before submitting it to council. Do we have an update, or are we updating the vegetation management plan, or is that really what we, some context around that?
I think we do that in the fall, so that'll be coming up.
Okay. And conservation of land. So, of course, Habitat Restoration Day, and Michelle's proposed to have an additional day in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a great idea. I'd certainly be looking forward to participating in that. How does the rest of the committee feel?
Yep, that's fine.
Great.
Are we doing a whole review of the work plan now?
This was on the agenda for last meeting, and it was pushed to this meeting.
Oh, okay.
So these were potential revisions and additions to the work plan.
Oh, I see.
So basically,
Okay.
just we're just looking at this to make sure if anything else needs to be added, or we've completed and remove.
Okay, I see.
I mean, the one option is just that we have this on the agenda and we talk about it if we're ever short on things to do. We seem like we have lots
Going.
Yeah.
going on. So if you want to jump on to staff updates, we can do that.
Yeah.
I think that sounds good.
Once we go through staff updates, I have a couple of questions. A couple of things I'd like to follow up on.
Sure.
We'll do staff updates first.
Okay, I'll start. We already talked about the Brisbane Acre zoning regulations. We'll let you know when the council has that on their agenda, likely in September. Natural gas and methane leak mapping. There'd been a request to put the link to the Environmental Defense Fund on the website. We did get approval to do that if the committee still wants to.
Yep.
I also made contact with our government account executive at PG&E about what they do with regard to methane or natural gas leaks. And he said he needed an email. I called him. He needed an email to send a request for information to gas operations. He actually told me he would have it by the end of August, early September. I haven't seen it yet, but maybe we can have that by the 9th.
Great.
What they've done, what they're doing, what their program is.
Great.
Wonderful.
The draft climate-friendly purchasing guide, some of you saw that there was the OSEC liaisons met with a college summer intern. The city manager's office got a summer intern. They had some projects, but they asked staff for other projects for her, so we came up with this idea of having a climate-friendly purchasing policy. So she created a guide, and she presented it at the council meeting. I don't know if anybody saw that. Michelle probably saw it last Thursday. So what we've got is the guide that they wanted to refer to us to look at, and I don't know if we would make it into a policy or just make plans for implementation, but that's something that'll fold into the climate action plan, and we can agendize that if the committee would like to and kind of talk about it in more detail, or we can work on it as a subcommittee. Or
So, was the thing that she presented at the meeting the actual purchasing policy?
it was a guide. It's just
It was a guide. That was all she did, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, because I thought we actually had a plan, but we don't.
It was called a guide, so it's not the same level as a policy.
Yeah. Okay, because I thought we were going to use San Mateo County's policy.
I don't know if they've finalized their updates.
She used their guide as a reference, and
Uh-huh.
she's been in contact with them, and also referenced other cities, and she kind of compiled all that information into what she presented.
Okay.
So again,
I was just I mean, I know she was only a summer intern, but it was sort of like, we'll buy recycled paper. And because I went to that and I was sort of like, okay.
Were you able to read a copy? I mean, she did a bit
I
more than
didn't
that.
have a copy. I looked for a copy, but it's not been circulated, so I know. I mean,
on
I
the
actually,
website with the agenda. It's linked on the. You know what? It might not have been because it was it was supposed to be on the agenda, and somehow it didn't happen. So she did it as a presentation. So,
Okay.
as the committee wishes, we can send it out. We can talk about it at the next meeting. We can talk about it at a future.
yeah, it would be great if you can send it to us so we can review it.
Yeah.
We haven't seen it, except maybe Michelle.
How do you feel
Yeah.
about,
I'd like to see it.
yeah, no, I would certainly like to see it, but in terms of agendizing it, I know we've talked about agendizing a lot of discussion topics for next month, so.
I'd put it off till October.
Yeah, does that sound good? So we have.
Well, and I think it's something that's the next step when we have a plan, when we have a climate
Okay.
action
Right.
plan.
Yeah.
That we need to start doing.
Okay, great.
I have a couple other things that didn't make it on the list because we put this list together before Natalie went on vacation. Just October. Glenn made the request about Owl Canyon, and so background. I understand that you guys did a cleanup day up there once, and when I was starting to become involved with the committee,
It was a year ago, June.
we put a trash can up there, and we did put a trash can up there, so to the best of my knowledge, it wasn't chained down, and it's gone.
Oh,
So, but to go a little bit further, that is part of the park. It's right at the county-state area,
Yeah.
so I made contact with the park superintendent, and he passed it on to the ranger that's in charge of the area to investigate, and I'm kind of hoping that they'll put a trash can up and maintain it.
yeah, certainly, I don't think any of us really cares who does it and empties it, but there should be one. And meanwhile, the place is really trashed again. It was when I was up there, I guess 3 weeks ago, there was another big accumulation of trash.
Right, so I had someone follow up and take a look.
Okay, great.
And
Is that where the skaters?
Yeah.
That's that's right where the skaters skateboard.
where they have that.
That drainage thing that the skateboarders are using as a skateboard park.
And I also asked the county if they have an online service request like we have, so that if people saw trash, they could just send them and they do not. They do
Oh.
not, but they can be contacted through email.
So we just tell you, basically, if we...
That's fine, yeah. And if we get a trash can, maybe that's going to help, or their trash can. Maybe I'll
Yeah.
suggest if they want to put one up that they secure it.
Yeah, I suggest that they get a lock and chain, perhaps.
Okay. Were we gonna?
Some items that Barbara wanted to follow up on?
Well, we also talked about under staff report. You were going to talk about the letter
Yes.
and the trees.
Did I? Oh, right, the trees, I did email you back about, we are doing the deep root watering. We're capturing.
But are we only doing the ones here at the park? Because all over town.
No, we're doing.
ours
Fair
have been
Point.
done.
We're doing as many. I could get a map. We have maps of what the areas are, but we're doing as many public, city street trees, park trees, out at Sierra Point. Anything that we see that's distressed, we're trying to. We have a certain number of hours allotted in the budget, so I think they're coming out one day a week,
Okay.
and they're using 1,000 gallons, and they're hitting as many trees as.
So a lot of times the trees don't look distressed until it's too late.
Well, we are using someone that is a landscape expert, so.
Okay.
We did our
It's a little bit unprecedented what's happening right now with the drought.
Yeah.
And the
I
trees.
saw the guy from Davy Tree on my street, and he was doing every tree.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
They've been out.
It doesn't seem to be I don't know how fast that machine puts out water, but he wasn't spending very much time on each tree. So unless that thing puts out, I don't know, it could put out 10 gazillion gallons a second, I don't know, but If it was my hose, it would have been inadequate. That's all I can say.
And I think the goal is not to spend time on labor and not get enough water to a tree, and I think we're trying to re-hit the trees that,
More often.
yeah, that need it.
Thank you.
But if you have specific advice, we want to hear it, because more eyes
Yeah,
better than
I just, he was going
most.
from tree to tree pretty fast, so I don't know how much water that translates to.
It made a visible difference to the trees in front of my house, and they got those too.
Okay, good.
Good, because otherwise we're going to lose them all. And when it starts to rain, they're going to go down like nobody's business.
right,
'cause
right, bigger problem, right?
yeah, they don't have the root support. They don't have the root systems anymore to support the size of the trees. And if we start watering them now, they'll start growing the roots so they might survive the first storm. You know, in the El Nino, it's not going to be pretty, I don't think.
When we're talking about trees, there's a big giant dead tree on the 100-step trail, pine tree.
Where?
On the 100-step trail, the stairs that go up.
The Bicentennial Walkway?
Okay, if you call it that.
Is that what-
Yeah, they're
Okay.
aware of that
The
tree, and I
100-step,
brought it up at the council meeting last week, and there's that tree's already earmarked to
They
be
started, I
removed.
understand they started.
They started today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a city, it turned out to be a city-owned tree. It's very expensive to remove, but it is really dangerous and dead.
And would have been pretty inaccessible to water on the walkway.
It was a Monterey pine. They're kind of almost a lost cause at this point.
Which one's Bicentennial Walkway? Is that?
That goes from Solano Street up to the corner of Klamath and Sierra Point,
Oh, yeah.
and then from Sierra Point up to Humboldt.
Yep, okay, great.
So it's my understanding they're going to start watering twice a week. So it'll be quick water, but twice a week.
Good. And then that letter.
In the letter, that was, I understand, let me see what I've got about it. The planning department is kind of heading this process and hiring a consultant. They hope to get a consultant on board in September. That would have to be brought to the council to approve a contract. So there was a letter that was sent out to all the community groups to develop a community engagement process. Unfortunately, when it was sent to me, it said, "Dear community member," and I was blind CC'd, so I didn't realize I was supposed to forward it to two committees. So I did as soon as you actually brought it to my attention, Michelle. Thank you. So we don't know very much in terms of how the process will evolve, because the consultant hasn't been brought on board and they're going to steer the process, but the city wants it to be an engagement with all of the community groups. That includes OSEC. That includes a number of...
Mountain Watch didn't get a letter, and
That's interesting.
I don't think some of the other community groups got them either. So I don't think it was well distributed.
And I think it's an open process, so I think there's room for those comments. If you know of any other groups, I kind of was, over the shoulder, saw a list, and it looked like there were about 20 groups, but that you don't necessarily...
I think it
take
needs
everyone.
to be redone, so people really are aware of it. And the other issue is that the community involvement is going to be really challenging, because the schedule for the EIR review with the Planning Commission is like 2 meetings a week through September and October and into November. And I don't see how people can be expected to pay attention to everything that's going on at one time. I mean, that's horrific.
Yeah, and I don't know if they know the exact schedule for this. Maybe it will kind of fall right at the end of that process, and the fact that they're only getting a consultant in September, but I can forward those comments. I mean, I'm not directly part of that. So I don't know if it's going to be something that the whole committee works on, or you appoint a couple of people to represent you at workshops. I think that's still to be determined.
Well, kind of the letter said that they were going to do a presentation to us in August. So August is kind of coming on.
And so I did check in with that, and that was Caroline was going to do those, and she's out of town this week. I could ask her if she could come in September, but it's really just to say there's going to be a process, and we're going to want your input on. And it was going to be very preliminary. We'll have more information that's really more in depth as we get the consultant on board.
I just want to make sure everybody's aware of what it is that is on the table and under contemplation. So I hope you guys all read the letter, looked at the map, and can visualize, 4- and 5-story walls of development in this area.
Where is that?
In the 25 acres in the area where we are right now. Brisbane Village, Park Lane, the teacher property, City Hall.
Michelle, why don't you enlighten me a little bit? Because I've read it, I've looked at it, I've tried to make sense of it. I just don't understand what they're trying to do there.
They want to have I don't hate to use the word redevelopment because it has all kinds of other connotations, but a plan to develop housing and mixed use in this area instead of the light industrial that we have now. And that would entail, like, I don't know what they are planning. That's kind of what the consultant is talking about. But multi-use buildings would be like 4- and 5-story tall buildings, sort of like what they have in Emeryville and San Mateo and some of the other urban corridors along Millbrae, along El Camino.
They're not required to stick to the 34-foot building height limit?
Not if they rezone it.
Okay. And they're basically trying to build more shopping type stuff with
Not really sure what the exact
housing?
plan is.
So nobody really knows. That's why I was trying to figure out what they're trying to do.
Yeah,
know
it's kind of
exactly
weird
that.
because in the
Mixed use of some kind.
housing element, they, when we had to do the RENA numbers, they arranged it to be mixed use along Park Lane and building,
Right.
taking out industrial and making housing and with retail. Or I'm not exactly sure how it finally played out, but then in the budget process, it was budgeted for a consultant to do a plan when it wasn't ever approved to do a plan except through the budget process. So it's kind of getting this backdoor thing, and I'm concerned about it.
And where was the letter with the proposal published?
The letter, you got a copy of the letter from Karen just this past week,
Oh, that's the one, okay.
along with the map of the area that they're talking about, the 25 acres in the industrial park, Brisbane Village area.
Now, somebody told me that they were just planning on changing the entryway into Brisbane.
That's kind of a separate plan, or maybe end up part of this Parkside Village plan. But I think people really need to be aware of what's happening, including us, because some of that area is open space.
Okay.
So
I look forward to finding out more.
I do too.
Thank you.
And so what are the next steps for us to find out more?
So when a consultant's brought on board, then they'll start a process, this community visioning process, and they'll involve this committee and other community groups.
Awesome.
And kind of this long-term planning for this.
And there is something in our email to read as well, right? There's like a letter? That's what.
A letter and a map of the area that's proposed as the Brisbane Parkside Village, or whatever they're calling it,
Yeah,
Parkside.
Parkside at Brisbane Village.
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me, so I can't.
Okay.
Maybe I missed it.
And TAC representation.
Yeah, so I don't know if the San Mateo County had hoped to communicate with all of the committee that was part of why Ramona had asked to come and speak to the committee. When you brought the question up, I asked at the staff level, and I was asked to kind of investigate whether it should be if it was a public meeting, then anyone could attend, and if that was the issue. And our city attorney said, no, it was a staff level meeting, even though it wasn't a public meeting that had to be open to anyone based on how it was set up. And no one else at this point it didn't come up again, so I think we thought that it was
Resolved? No, it's not resolved.
yeah, resolved, I guess I should say. So no one else has assigned someone yet, and I think that I was told we would have to look into that before the city. It'd be better if each city that were represented in the HCP had a representative, so I'm going to have to ask the question again. I guess I thought it was resolved because I hadn't heard back. And I did also want to update that Ramona offered a few documents, and I had a conversation with her between when she did her presentation, and she said she tried to get it before the next meeting, and she sent an email maybe 10 minutes before the meeting. So some documents will be forthcoming. I think we have that management plan to look at. So we'll forward that to you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I was hoping we could get from staff an update on how we're doing with the Sun Shares program and signups.
I think that's...
The application period is closed, if I understand correctly. I'm just wondering if you could give us next meeting perhaps a brief update on how many people, how do we do?
Yeah, definitely, sure.
I was the understanding that it was extended.
Oh, okay.
I think they unofficially extended it. They said that if people were still interested, that they would...
Because it takes an immense amount of time to get funding.
Okay. Well, even if it's unofficially extended, I think we should promote it and see if we can snag a couple more people in there who may be waffling on the fence. That's my personal opinion, if the committee has any. When we were met as the Education and Outreach Subcommittee, we talked about maybe making the sustainability page a little more accessible because it's pretty darn buried. And that website, although it's beautiful and everything is in there, a lot of things you want are buried 6 and 7 clicks deep under obscure menus. And if we could maybe, that was one of the things we wanted to ask staff, so maybe we could figure out how to bring that a little more forward, make it a little more accessible, a little more findable. I'm not sure exactly what that entails. Staff's discretion, I think.
Yeah, we can always do news items and bring it to the top, but I personally, the search feature on the website isn't that, it's there, but it isn't that great, and it isn't, I'm sure it's probably not used that much.
Yeah.
You have to enter a word exactly to get to something that's there.
Also, I got an email saying that Brisbane has joined the Green Business Program.
From your application, based on your
Yeah, well, I don't know. I was confused because I thought if Brisbane had paid the fee and joined the program, I would have heard something from staff. But it was actually one of the people who goes through and vets the applications from the program emailed me back and said that Brisbane's now part of the program. So
I don't.
What happened?
I don't want to say this on camera, but I don't think that we've paid.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe I should just say yes and see how far I get. I don't know. Also, we had that letter that Glenn and I worked on about lot paving.
I have that to finish.
Okay.
Yeah, that hasn't died. I just have not highlighted that I haven't finished it yet.
It's just in a coma.
Yes.
Okay.
Resuscitated.
Let's resuscitate it. Somebody get out the paddles. Because I would personally, I mean, I don't know that it was the end-all and be-all of everything, but I think those of us who worked on it would like to see it move forward. And I think that's it for the moment.
Absolutely, Glenn.
This is not a staff update, although I did mention it to Karen, I think. Our former committee member, Elena Court's husband, passed away. And it's traditional for OSEC to send a card in a case like that. And I was supposed to bring one to a meeting, and I plain forgot. So I'm wondering if I were to bring a card by in the next day or two and leave it with Natalie, maybe people could drop by and sign it, and we could send it to her. Is that acceptable? Is that okay with you?
Yes, I'll just have it accessible and visible on my desk, and someone
Okay.
can come to, planning counter and ask for it, and I'll make sure, Angel and maybe, people know.
Okay. Sorry, I forgot. I just completely forgot to and left the house without it. So I'll get it over here tomorrow or Friday morning.
I move we approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Oh, I had one correction. Where'd it go?
Not allowed.
Absolutely, it's allowed. That's why we
Oh.
review it.
It was one weird thing about confusing mission blues with cabbage whites.
Oh, I saw that
supposedly
too.
said, and I was like, no.
No.
You cannot confuse a mission blue with cabbage whites. I did not say that. Nobody could confuse those two.
You can confuse them with other blues, but not with cabbage whites.
Yes. So if you would please just remove or revise that and attribute it to somebody else, I'd appreciate it, 'cause I never said that.
Where is that? I saw that too.
That was it. That was
Yeah, I
it.
saw that as well. Oh, here it is. It's Ebel asked if the blue butterflies she has seen could be mission blue. Cabbage butterflies can be mistaken as the mission blue butterfly.
Nope.
You didn't say that. I think it was Ramona who said that, but we all said, no, I don't think so. I don't know. But there's a couple of other typos and things like that, like under where she says the mountain is undergoing scrub conversion on the mountain, which means loss of habitat for butterflies. Not all conversion is occurring in high priorities. That's actually succession, not conversion. At the very beginning, under presentation by Ramona, that should all be,
Second.
the second dash, that should be succession and not conversion. And Hayek asks if conversion from grassland to scrub be considered natural succession.
Well, is that what she said? Because I typed what she said.
Did she say conversion? Because the correct expression is succession.
Yeah.
So, but if she said conversion,
Let the record show.
yeah. Okay.
Any other,
There's a motion. Is there a second?
is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
As amended.
So I think that brings us to the end of our agenda for the August meeting. Do we have a motion?
Ooh, I move we close the meeting and move on.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned.
You gotta be careful with stuff like that. Things could happen to you. Huh? Bad things could happen if you don't let the meeting adjourn.